This is the story of struggle for freedom and democracy in Egypt.
My name is Lillie Paquette, and I am the director and producer of We Are Egypt, which is a forthcoming documentary about the political opposition movement in Egypt leading up to the revolution of January and February 2011.
Oh, there they are. Oh my God, can you see them?
So I spent about 14 months in Egypt before the revolution, filming events on the ground that led to the revolution. I interviewed and filmed events across the board in terms of the political opposition movement, the labor movement, the youth democracy movement, the opposition candidates, different very key events throughout the year 2010. I was a college student when September 11th happened, and September 11th really, the events of September 11th launched me into an interest in looking at the Middle East. It was something I didn't know much about, and I felt very strongly about. So I started taking all Middle East classes, and I dove right in, head first. It was completely my passion, and then I ended up getting invited to go on a visit to Egypt, a Fulbright-funded program, like an exchange program called the Dialogue of Civilizations. I had only known Egypt in terms of its beautiful history, the ancient history, the cradle of civilization in many ways, which I still love and follow. But modern politics of Egypt, definitely, that was when I first started looking into it. I don't know if there was going to be anything. People had told me there's not going to be something in Egypt yet. There won't be anything for another 20 or 30 years. People have been saying this for the last 20 or 30 years, that there's going to be an uprising, but nothing's happened yet. So it was really sort of like a shot in the dark.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My main aim was to bring this footage back to the West and to show it to a Western crowd, namely a US audience. You ask your average American on the street, do you know what's going on in Egypt? Camels, pyramids, people, in the desert. Really, and it sounds cliche, but it's actually really true.
Assalamu alaikum.
What was so important about what I was looking at was if there were an uprising in Egypt someday, I wanted to know, or at least look into the scenarios of what the U.S. role would be, what the U.S. response would be, right? And I actually compared that potential scenario in my master's thesis to what happened in Iran in 1979. Here there's a really neat scene with Omar Sharif, if you care to look at it.
I adore Egypt. I adore these people. They are poor people, but smiling poor people and hopeful poor people.
The reason I wanted to interview Omar Sharif is because he's such a larger-than-life character, and everyone knows he's an Egyptian, and I really wanted to bring in... Nobody was looking at Egypt at this time, right? It wasn't something that people were... It wasn't on the national headline, the international headlines. So I thought it would be interesting and important to get a name such as Omar Sharif that people love and understand and like in the West, and sort of bring him into the film to get his commentary on his country and what they were going through during this time.
Even if half the population dies, they will hope.
But towards the end of my time there, I was like, it's time for me to get the other side of the story. I don't want to just show all the activists. I want to see, get at least their official version of the story. This is the day before the election in November 2010. This is Isra, one of the other main characters. What I saw from the activists, what touched me personally in my own life, was their determination and their the constant falling and getting up again, and one day being like, we're going to do this, we've made progress, we're not giving up, and then the next day it'd be like, what are we doing this for? And sometimes I felt the same way. I'm like, what am I doing here? Why am I filming this, never-ending struggle against the dictator? But the film actually ends really beautifully, the way I have it cut right now. It ends with a phone conversation between the main character and me when the revolution actually happened. And his voice, I mean, the sound of his voice is absolutely astounding. It's beautiful. He's, you know, it's so excited. It's so full of what one could imagine. Why the revolution happened when it did, but I would like to give Bassem's response actually to me when I asked him. The way he put it was, he says it was a perfect storm. One thing could have been a little bit off and we wouldn't have had this revolution now. Somehow the people came out, somehow the activists got together, somehow we organized, somehow we stayed, somehow we didn't get scared and push back. There was also different movements that came together, not just the people who cared about the politics or the democracy, lots of different things coming together. The experience of Khaled Said and what happened in June 2010, which I was there for, sort of him becoming the man who was allegedly beaten to death by police, becoming their champion of their symbol of we don't want to see this anymore. So here's Muhammad al-Baradei, and this is inside the home of Khaled Said. And he went there to pay condolences and then lead the people out to this huge protest, one of the biggest ones I've ever seen in Egypt. Many people credit Tunisia and the experience of them bringing down their dictator just, you know, weeks before the Egyptian revolution. If history is any indicator, right, you know, any situation where people have been oppressed for too long, we've seen them uprise and take their destiny into their own hands eventually. No matter what battle you win, no matter what success you get, there's always, in terms of people, you know, struggling for equality and justice, there's always going to be the next challenge. There's always going to be some other power vacuum coming in and trying to take that away. Democracy, truly, I believe, only exists when there's the constant push for it. And the minute you think you have it, you don't.